Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Rebel Radio. In today's Schlopic, scrutinizing a brand new upcoming game that seemingly looks like the reincarnation of the day before, God Save Birmingham.
Zombie games will forever be a staple in video gaming, and it seems that every year we get brand new flavors of this nouvelle cuisine. Even though fans of this genre are easily excited whenever a new zombie game gets announced, especially one of this caliber, it is kind of hard to ignore a glaring elephant in the room.
Well, let's see this one.
Shoot him in the head?
Back in 2021, Fantastic shocked the world with a trailer for their upcoming zombie game the day before. Now we know how much of a slogfest that was, but back then, the game was revealed with a cinematic trailer that excited the entire world. It was apparently so good that it skyrocketed the game to be the most wishlisted game on Steam in all of history. The problem was, Icarus flew too close to the sun with wings of plastic doused in highly flammable gas. His wings melted, his body burst into flames, and his once glorious visage finally gets exposed as an absolute scam. A generic, asset-flipped, not even working, giant scam of a game. Fantastic flew so close to the sun with this game, only to fall to the deepest part of the abyss, never to be seen ever again. Fast forward to 2025, and we have a game with a reveal trailer that looks like it's going to be the most unique, the most cinematic, and the most hardcore zombie survival game to ever grace the world of gaming. God Save Birmingham. It's a medieval zombie survival game that seems to lean into hardcore stealth gameplay and intricate survival mechanics to manage thirst, food, and perhaps mental and physical maladies through sleep, cooking, and barricading buildings? At first glance, this looks like it to be an instant game of the year, but it's really hard to get excited for a game like this, especially when the trailer looks and feels like it was cut from the same cloth as the day before's. Game trailers these days can have this certain vibe to them, where everything just looks way too good to be true. You know, the overly cinematic footage with gameplay that you never really see in games of the same genre.
Oh shit! Talon yung pig! Talon yung pig! Oh no!
But is it a scam? Well, not necessarily. But there are a few things we can check to speculate what the end product will look like. First off, the Steam page. If we scroll down to the About section, we can get a general idea about the game and what the devs intend it to be. The end has come. A strange plague sweeps the countryside, transforming men into monsters and cities into slaughterhouses. You are one of the last survivors of Birmingham, alone against the shambling corpses of your former friends and neighbors with only your wits to protect you. Well, this one is pretty obvious. It is a zombie survival game after all, but this makes me wonder if the game will even consider having NPCs around like what we see in a game like Dying Light, where, while the gameplay loop has you going around scavenging, crafting better weapons, and exploring the world, you'll still follow a story told through quests and other characters. Or will this experience have a story that will be told through notes and environmental storytelling, but mostly devoid of any real characters and cinematic experiences like in games such as Generation Zero? For what it's worth, I like Generation Zero, but I don't think it's a good design to follow when making a cinematic survival game. Even if you take out all of the story elements, at its core, Generation Zero is designed to be a co-op looter shooter. But for a game that boasts realism with a cinematic experience, I think it is crucial to have a good narrative to follow rather than have a game that's technologically impressive but is an empty sandbox with zero real goals to encourage progress in its gameplay. And sadly, the reveal trailer suggests that you'll probably be alone in this endeavor, and I can easily imagine the game turning stale and boring in just a couple of hours, even if they manage to deliver on all of their promises. Nourish thy body. Even after the end of the world, life goes on. Forage for supplies, craft tools and weapons, then set out on the hunt for food, water, and shelter. The clock is always ticking, and the horde is always near. It seems that, aside from cooking, the game will also have other crafting mechanics for tools and weapons. What those tools and weapons are, still haven't had the slightest idea. I do hope that the devs will release more information and videos about their game. Informative videos that talk about what they're working on and what the game has, to to help people genuinely understand more about the game rather than having these highly scripted fake gameplay trailers that are only fishing for artificial hype. Master medieval physics. Wriggle your way out of harrowing situations with physics-based mechanics that reward quick wits and skill. Stack furniture to barricade doors, leap low fences to trip your clumsy toes, and several limbs reduce the undead to angry, wiggling torsos. Just be careful not to stumble over a bucket while fleeing for your life. We actually see these systems in action a few times in the trailer, when the player blocks doors with stuff and when he grabbed a ladder and built a bridge to cross to the other building. Making games is a pretty challenging endeavor, and I can imagine making physics-based games to be even harder. If it was that easy, we'd probably have a dozen Half-Life sequels by now. But physics games tend to take more time and effort to get every system working properly, so I can at least respect the developers for attempting to make this type of video game that Valve itself has been holding off on making. Take a bite out of history. Explore a carefully reconstructed 14th century Birmingham in all its bucolic, bubonic glory. Stop by the markets or the burgage plots to forage for resources, raid boarded up smithies for tools, grab a drink at the nearest tavern, and explore historic architecture at the Church of St. Martin in the Bullring. This part of the game's description is hard to argue with, firstly because I've never been to Birmingham myself, but mainly because the comment sections are in a consensus about how realistic this game is to the real Birmingham. Just read these comments. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the early access version of the game will contain about 1/4 of the entire town, with the rest coming between now and full release. So we can pretty much confirm that this game will be coming out to early access, which can be potentially catastrophic if they end up releasing a game that doesn't work well or doesn't play as they advertised in their reveal trailer. See, if what we saw in the trailer doesn't even come close to the actual initial early access version, this game is basically done for and 100% will be dead on arrival, and it'll only make it so much worse if the devs argue,
but the reveal trailer is supposed to show what the game will eventually look like after 10 years of early access.
it's only going to fan the flames that this game is actually most likely a scam. But ladies and gentlemen, there are a bunch of other things that we can look into to paint a better picture and speculate how this game is going to turn out. In this game's Steam store page, we can go and visit the recent events and announcements section. Here we can see that the game is being actively developed, with the developers releasing devlogs talking about their progress and some other general topics about their game. One of these devlogs talk about the game's physics mechanics and how they're implementing it, and another devlog talks about how they're researching and recreating 14th century Birmingham. At least with this information, we can have a sigh of relief that a considerable amount of effort is being put into this game's development. Another thing we can look into is the system requirements. There was a time that system requirements actually meant something, and that the minimum system requirements usually meant being able to run the game smoothly at lower graphic settings. Nowadays, especially with UE5 games, even the recommended system requirements finds it hard to run a game without frame drops and stutters. Looking at you, Oblivion. And looking at this game's system requirements, we can already speculate that this game is definitely using UE5, so this is going to run really badly on mid-tier to lower systems, mid-tier being RTX 30 variants and the RTX 4060. I'm unfamiliar with AMD cards, so I won't even discuss them here. But hey, we've looked at the game in all its available glory that's currently available. What else can we look at to quell our skepticism? Well, we can look into the developers of the game. Ocean Drive Studio, an independent video game development studio focused on creating high-quality and memorable video game experiences, located in Songnam-si, South Korea. A company with over 50 employees is working on this game. It kind of put me at ease a little that at least this game probably won't be an actual scam, for the sole reason that the developers are based in South Korea. Because knowing South Korean culture, the last thing you probably want there is having your public reputation be dragged through the mud. We can also look into the company's other games, and we can use them as reference and how they performed to create a baseline for what to expect. Their first game, Lost Eidolons, released back in 2022 and is a cinematic, turn-based tactics game currently sitting at a mostly positive rating on Steam. At least it seems like when it comes to the visuals and graphics, these guys are pretty capable, and considering that they already have a track record of creating a cinematic experience, makes their new game all the more plausible. Next game, Section 13, a top-down twin-stick shooter much like the original Helldivers. It kinda seems like this one has absolutely no connection to the development of this new game, but it's concerning that they have another early access game on their plate while they're planning to release another one in the future. Then they also have a free game called Dropkick Navi. Now, this one I can actually see its importance in relation to God Save Birmingham. We can look at this as their tech demo for messing around with physics and testing viability for their systems. Lastly, they have another Lost Eidolons game, but this time adding a roguelite spin to the series. But the problem with this one is, 1, it's not made to be a cinematic experience like the first game, and 2, it's also currently under early access, which means once God Save Birmingham finally releases whenever it does, Ocean Drive Studio will have 3 actively in development games on their plate. Their games at least don't look half bad. In fact, the Lost Eidolon games look pretty interesting, but it's worrisome to think that a game that promises a lot already also has a lot of internal competition in terms of development resources. Will it be a good idea to release this game in early access while they have other games they're currently working on? I don't know. Probably not. But there is a non-zero chance that they have different teams working on different projects in their studio, so this probably isn't much of an issue. But regardless, at least in terms of pedigree, Ocean Drive Studio, the game behind God Save Birmingham, an upcoming cinematic, physics-based zombie survival game, is highly unlikely to be a scam. It'll be weird if a developer who's shipped actual games in the past will suddenly pivot to scam its audience for a quick buck. Seems pretty unlikely, but while the game may be legit, will it be good and playable is an entirely different conversation to be had. But that's pretty much it for this video. We'll see where this road takes us later down the line in the future. From what I've seen from their trailer, the game looks great, but will it live up to its own hype is a question with an answer that we'll eventually come to know once the game eventually releases into early access. But before then, hit like if you liked the video, and remember to subscribe for more opinionated schlopics about games, entertainment, and other things. That's all for today. Bye-bye.
Get your shitty videos right here. Watch more, drop more views. We'll be back with more, so stay tuned to Rebel Radio.